You're the boss, Young.
You are the leader. Lead.
You're the leader.
Make a decision.
Okay. Hello and welcome to the Quackcast. This is Quackcast number 596. The Drunkduck Quackcast, of course. With me is Tanserine, Baines, and Pitface.
Hello.
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 I like that. You almost did a little chorus there. Hello, hello, hello. Oh dear. So, this week we're talking about the idea of leadership, which is a topic that was influenced by Terrible Writing Advice, which is this great video series on YouTube. And it's really cool and funny, so you should check that out. That's just the best. Just check it out. Just stop listening now and just watch that instead. Or keep listening to us. So yeah, this week we're talking about the leaders in fiction, but also leaders in reality, being the traits of leadership and what makes a good leader, what makes a bad leader, because both are equally valid in fiction. Bad leaders are just great in fiction, as well as good leaders, but you don't want to try and portray a good leader and portray a bad leader by accident. Obviously, you want to portray what you intend. But before we get into that, I have to bring up the good old featured comic. Quackcast featured a comic called Maiden Post Beginnings. Quai, please tell us about Maiden Post Beginnings.
Hello, this is Quackcast, and the feature I've selected for this week is Maidan Post Beginnings by Chalk Cookie, and it is rated T for teen. The city streets of Tom Bailey City are empty when a young man wakes up barefoot from a nap on a sidewalk before meeting his grandfather. Meanwhile, a stealth spacecraft comes into orbit of ringed planet Imest. It is here we meet Camilla, a 23-year-old gadgeteer protected by a life-size mechanical suit, who is about to go face-to-face with a sharp-nailed, giant robot that could potentially kill her. The art uses a great amount of dark shadows and shading techniques, while bursts of bright yellow, citrine, and neons highlight the nighttime environment. Discover whether Camilla will evade the imposing robot and read Maidan Post Beginnings by Chalk Cookie, rated T.
And that was the featured comic by Quackcast. Okay, so next up, the featured music. Gunwaltz has given us a lovely little theme. It's to a comic called The Waves Inside, which is a great name. I mean, geez, that would be a good name for a self-help book or maybe like a biography or something, autobiography. The Waves Inside. So this music.
Intriguing.
What's that?
Intriguing, that
It
title.
is.
I wonder what it means.
It's so cool. Clear ocean, orange, blue, pink, liquid metal swells. A calming, hypnotic synth journey over 1,000 kilometers of smooth, textured sea. Take it away, Gunwallace, with The Waves Inside. was the theme to The Waves Inside, a tune by Gunwallers of a comic by The Jagged. So give that a read and then you'll know what that music is all referring to. So now we're talking about leadership in fiction, but also leadership in reality. Leadership's an interesting thing. I mean, people do conferences on leadership, TED Talks, write self-help books, give lectures, and there's whole big courses about that in things like the military and business, and people doing their whole courses on it. How to be a leader, the traits of leadership, blah blah blah, and they study old leaders and things. So it's obviously a subject that a lot of people believe they know a lot about, and we're just going to add to that the whole leadership stuff. But like portraying leaders in fiction is a very particular thing, because there's the I think we talked about this in our little video that we did, but there's a disconnect between actual real leaders and fictional kind of shortcuts that display a leader. The cliches that display a leader, certain traits. So I think what I mentioned was, like, in fiction, especially in like a visual fiction, like a movie or a comic, there's that visual aspect to it. So the visual shortcuts to showing a leader are often someone who stands out. And how are you going to make them stand out? Well, often it's someone who's bigger than everyone else. Big shoulders, often taller, physically imposing, older. Usually it's someone older. They might have some physical traits about them that make them stand out more. I mean, you think about like some leaders in fiction, like say classic Treasure Island. The leader there is Long John Silver. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So this guy has like a hook for a hand and a peg leg and all this kind of stuff. So these are special boy characteristics that sort of mark him out as being different to everyone else. And, he's very knowledgeable and very competent. He doesn't take the leadership until partway through the story, but, he has those traits that you would immediately mark him out as being a leader. So, yeah, fiction is full of this. Baines, what kind of things would you sort of think about? Say if you were going to create a leader, I mean, which you probably, you obviously have in your comics. What kind of shortcuts would you give to them to visually indicate that this character is a leader?
Oh, visually? I mean, I guess it depends on the context and it depends on the type of leader and stuff. It's interesting what you say about and you said, talked about it more on the Patreon video, but the leader was bigger and stronger and tougher and everything in a lot of fiction. My kind of reading experience is that that's not the case, and it would be rare that the big strong character would be the leader. But they would usually be the
is that like reading versus visual depictions? Because those are two different things.
I don't know how to read, but so that's a whole other story. But no, just to comment on what you said earlier, I didn't want to interrupt you. That I often found that the leader would not be the strongest one, the biggest one. That they would be, sort of directing the big strong person, and the big strong person would be one of the soldiers,
a second in command. Well, it depends, but those are particular visual shortcuts to making a kind of leader. So, but there are others.
Yeah, so to answer your question, I just wanted to address that. But yeah, to answer your question, yeah, it's sort of the leader or the focal character. I mean, I guess I know I've done a news post on the focal character on a page or in a scene. You can have them behaving in a different way than all the other characters in the panel. Where you put them in the camera can make them loom large by being, sort of facing a different way or posed a different way, or just where they're arranged in your camera can make them be the dominant force, whether whether the character is physically bigger or not. Like how that's arranged can do everything. So I'm more like how they behave. Although, like you were saying, that's more like the writing, I guess. My leaders, when my team, like based on my little comedy troupe in typical Strange, they're not a heroic group with a leader, but when they do, like it's by force of personality. The big ones are not leaders, even though they might be impulsive and emotional and action oriented, and the leaders might not be always the smartest, or they might be it's the force of personality. It's like TK is the leader, Abigail is the leader. Yeah, I get, like you were talking about earlier on Patreon also, the confidence thing. When it's a more action oriented story, which I've only done a couple of so far, suddenly they're a lot more competent. Like their plans are, it's like, that's good thinking. You can't function in daily life, but you can create this plan to break into this bunker and save it. But yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Situational leadership.
Yeah, but I don't think I would visually design a character in a specific way. It would depend on the situation. Like they wouldn't necessarily be older or bigger or more impressive looking.
Well, it depends on the kind of leadership. Say if you were doing like a biker gang, what would a leader of a biker gang look like versus a leader of a military squad or a general? So those things all have different traits. So your biker group, maybe that would be a big, strong person.
Maybe, or maybe not.
Or a bully. And when you go to doing a general, like the traits that make a general generally are like the oldest person in the group, that kind of thing.
Right.
The person in the fanciest outfit,
I was about to say, they have more stripes and sort of adornment.
The fanciest outfit, I think there may be like some stereotypes on the leader, and it depends a lot on the type of story you are making. If it is more character driven, maybe you will find less stereotypical leaders. If it is more plot driven, you may get a lot of shorthand in the characters on who is who. Not necessarily, I'm just saying that maybe you have a correlation if you like. But yeah.
Yeah. So you're saying in the more action things, then you have the more cliche leaders, but the more intelligent stuff.
And again, not necessarily. It depends on. I think the writing makes the leader in the sense that depending on how the author, like the storyteller, approaches a story, you can sort of foresee who the leaders are going to be. Like you might have a false leader. Like if you have like a story about someone earning the leadership, like the righteous leader, if you like, the righteous leader storyline.
Mm.
So you get this false leader that wrongfully occupies the leadership position. However, that has happened. Could be something official, like in the army, or it could be the classroom top popular kid. I don't know. I mean, whatever constitutes the leader position. And then you have the other person, the other character that is going to be the true leader that needs to sort of earn the leadership by his or her their action, and then topple the false leader. So here you're going to have basically comparisons, like a compare and contrast, like, oh, audience, look at this false leader and how full of crap they are. And look at this real leader and they are the one, the real deal. So now we're
Right.
going to follow the real deal and how they basically usurp, if you like, the followers from the false leader.
Sounds like
And
The Lion King to me.
yeah, though, who is the
Yeah.
real leader there? Do you feel Simba is a leader? I don't think so. No.
Well, he's groomed to be the leader.
He's groomed to be the figurehead. That's a different thing. So, Nala is the leader. Nala is the one that pushes forward.
I see. Well, yeah, those are some interesting takes on the whole idea of positioning of leadership. I think it would be
The Disney story that comes to mind for this plot that I described is, I think, a dinosaur. It was a 3D thing about dinosaurs traveling, after the meteorite hit and everything, like they are in famine and they are seeking the greener pastures. If you have seen that, because it was really a great hit. But if you see that movie, that's like the textbook typical true leader versus false or bad leader.
could also be like
Land
Before Time.
Yeah.
It could also be like the Transformers, the movie. If any of you have seen that, because the original leader is, of course, Optimus Prime, who everyone loved, a leader from the cartoon series, and in the story, the person slated for leadership is the new truck character. Can't remember his name, but it turns out that the new leader is this other guy called Rodimus Prime, and he's going to be the true leader. So the one that everyone thought was the leader, the other truck one, is the false leader, and the true leader has to earn his place to become the proper leader of the group. So yeah, there you go, Tance. Someone took your idea and made a movie about it.
Yeah, I mean, it is also like, take real life. How many false leaders do we have in the saddle right now? Answers might vary depending on how you look at things. But there is certainly going to be at least one name that comes to your mind that, okay, that person shouldn't be leading anything. And XYZ is a better leader, or my neighbor would do a better job, or that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, there's an interesting aspect to leadership that I've sort of touched on before many years ago when I was talking about leadership, because people think, okay, so leadership is all about being a leader and leading, and being, for various reasons, you get into a position of leadership and you're the leader. But there are so many different aspects about how a leader is propelled to that position, and it could be just like they're the only one who is available to lead for whatever reason, or they're forced into that position, or it's luck or bad luck that makes them into the position, and because they're in the position, then they have to learn how to lead. So that is often an aspect of it. So like there's this, Tance, that leaders aren't born, they're created, and I think that's a thing they sort of teach as well. But that can happen from being stuck in a leadership role and then having to find your feet and learn how to make that work and then become a leader. Or you're stuck in a leadership role and you just fake it and you never learn how to lead. You just
Mm-hmm.
behave like a shit leader the whole time and lead people into the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you can learn how to lead and still be basically a butthole, but know how to lead. Yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
and that's fascinating. I mean, for me, one of a fascinating type of leader is the leader that nobody really likes, but they still all follow them, not because they are obliged, but because they feel that they can do the job and get them through whatever it is that they have to do. And,
Yeah.
and that's a very rare type of leaders that they do exist. Like, yeah, we hate him, he's a bastard, but he knows how to keep us alive, and we're staying with this person. Um,
Yeah, see, that wouldn't be a main character, hardly ever, that kind of leader. And it
yeah.
seems more suited to books than other mediums, maybe. Can you think of any examples of that? I can't.
I can think of many examples. Sea
Actually, I
captains,
can.
military kind of military
Mhm.
leaders. They're the ones who are definitely in that position. People hate them, but you can't depose them because of the hierarchy. So there's an internal structure. So that sort of prevents them from being toppled or having a coup against them, usually. But so they can be a bastard, but they can know how to lead because they've got a bit more information. They've people have an inbred, like an inbred, but a trained way of following. So naturally, the system works better if we follow, and so they stay in the leadership position, even if they're a bit crap. But
Yeah.
if they're good, yeah. So yeah, military, and navy.
The secret in this, I think, and that's the hair difference, like a good butthole leader versus a crap leader that is also a butthole, um, is a hair difference, and I think it comes down to whether there is a reason why they are the way they are, and whether they treat everyone the same way. And that does not mean that like they could be better behaved to someone, but what I mean to say is that people feel safe that the way that they are going to be handled by this person is going to be A, predictable, and B, viable. So, like, and the only leader I can think right now in fiction that is like that is Orestes, because I made him to
You
be
made him
like
like that.
yeah, he like nobody really likes him because he has literally he's not a people person at all. And even when he tries to be like the supportive guy and stuff, he messes it up big time. Yeah, he doesn't really know how to talk to people honestly. Um, and he has his own problems and stuff. But the reason people do follow him and rally behind him is that he is this kind of bastard to everyone because that's how he doesn't know how else to be. So people sort of roll with it, like this is how he is. And he truly cares for them in the sense that, yeah, he might cut you loose, but only to save everyone else. He will not cut you loose because he hates you,
Yeah.
except Basil. Except for Basil. Basil is an exception. Uh, so, and he's an exception because he's a rival in a different way and not leadership. But like for his resistance cell, he's actually a pretty efficient leader. Like he has very few casualties
Yeah.
and quite a few successes. So people will follow him begrudgingly, if you like. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can name leaders in fiction who are like this. Captain Bligh, Blackbeard. I mean, Blackbeard's a real person, and Bligh are real people. But in fiction, they're portrayed, as shitty people, but still, charismatic leaders, or just leaders that people follow. Negan from The Walking Dead is a shitty, horrible person. Often a lot of villains are shitty people, but people follow them. So, always. Sheriff of Nottingham. Horrible person.
It depends on the portrayal, I think, for Sheriff of Nottingham.
I don't remember a nice Sheriff of Nottingham.
No, I don't mean about whether, like, he is always a shit person. I'm talking about the leadership aspect, and whether he's a good leader or not. I think depends on who is telling the Robin Hood story, basically. So.
Yeah. But yeah, the one thing those things have in common is it's generally military or paramilitary. Because there has to be a reason that you don't want to revolt against this person. So that structure in place makes it more likely they're going to stay in a leadership position even if they're a shitty person or a butthole, like you said. So that's a popular choice.
The show Battlestar Galactica, I don't know if you guys have seen that, but it had a lot of nuances as far as stories about leaders and different kinds of leadership, and in this sort of sci-fi military context. I think the guy who developed the show is a real sort of military geek, and he's really into all that kind of stuff. So you see a lot of how the kind of how authority operates, and how the commander operates, as opposed to when he's out of action, what his second in command gets up to, which is maybe good in some ways, bad in some ways, good in some contexts, bad in some. And then when they, particularly, I think it's in season 2, when they run into another surviving battleship, there's a whole story arc, a couple episodes, I guess, with this new arrival, this admiral, and how she operates. And then there's a whole, I won't spoil anything just in case, but how things change when there's a change in leadership, and these different styles and types of leadership that bring everyone into conflict.
Interesting.
It's great on that level. I think the creators have a real interest in that kind of stuff. So worth a look.
That brings
Very
me
cool
to
show.
mind sci-fi in general. There's always, because sci-fi often tends to be focused on American sci-fi, at least, has a military command structure usually, or just a military sci-fi. You think of Star Trek or Star Wars, Andromeda, just so many different things. It's generally always a military setup. And yeah, Battlestar Galactica, like you say. And you think about the difference in leadership in all the different Star Trek series. And then you think of a parody of that in Futurama, with the worst leader in the world ever, which is Zach Brannigan.
Yeah, the worst leader in fiction.
And why do people still follow him? The only reason is his amazing charisma and the political military system that makes people follow him regardless. But yeah, he's a horrible, horrible person. Just in every possible way, he abuses his leadership and discards the people under him. He's horrible. But yeah, Star Trek is an interesting portrayal of different kind of leadership, and they really do make sure to try and portray these people in nuanced and clever ways to be leaders. At least in the 90s series, Star Trek Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager. But, other versions like Enterprise and the original series. They really, really make a good effort to make people kind of rounded, matriarchal or patriarchal kind of fatherly, motherly leaders. I think they're more fatherly than motherly in that series, including Janeway. And they're they're very kind, they're very empathetic, they know what to do, they delegate to their followers, so they're very much on the good end of the scale as leaders, which is a nice kind of thing. Versus, the Zap Brannigans who are deep in the other end. But I think I'll go on, Tans.
No, you go.
I was going to say, I think if you were wanting to portray a really good leader, you'd use those as a model. But you go on.
Yeah. I think a popular way that shows like, okay, this one is a good leader and that one isn't, is whether they are willing to also be led. So when they don't know what to do, but someone else steps up, like the situation calls for it, and that's another thing. You cannot necessarily lead in everything, like in every aspect or every problem or whatever. There may be a need for other people to step up and lead to solve a certain problem or to get the group through a rough patch that is very specific and it is beyond the skill set or knowledge or experience of your regular leader. That is good, but they are outclassed in this point.
Yeah.
So, but you have this other person in your group that can do it. They have the skill set, they have the knowledge, they can. And the question there is, do you have the capacity to allow them to lead? Because there's a power dynamic in a group, and if the leader does not give up their position, even temporarily, it's very hard to get the other person that merits, taking the wheel for this particular segment of the course to actually do it. So it is a question of whether the leader themselves are going to step to the side and say, come and lead because you are the one that knows what to do. And now I'm going to follow what you say because that's the thing that has to be done. And
kind of.
You remind me of sorry. You remind me of a funny story. I think it's in Leonard Nimoy's autobiography, in one of his autobiographies, where he talks about, and I think he has and quotes a letter he wrote to the producers of Star Trek in the 60s about his issues with changes that William Shatner made to the scripts, where Shatner had to have all the answers. And even when a script would come where he has to ask Spock, his second in command, science officer, to ask him something, even before Spock could say it, Kirk would guess what the answer was. This was, Leonard Nimoy's exaggerating in his letter to the producers, but it's like Kirk had to be everything. Like he had to have every area of expertise. At a certain point, I think Star Trek, when it's good, and the later series got very good at this, I think. When it's good, you had a very common dynamic where the captain would say, like, we need to do this, we need to solve this problem. And, so that he calls the chief engineer, and the engineer has to figure out the answer to the problem. On Next Generation, that happened constantly. It was all the time. It was like, we need to do this. Like, how do we do this? It was great. Yeah.
I was just thinking of the real world example. Star Trek's great in the way it does that. Focus on head of engineering. You come up and you tell us what to do, and or lead the doctor. So the doctor takes the lead in trying to work out the different ways to cure the virus, and this even happened in the original with the bones. But so in the real world, there is this constant dynamic in small military squads, not on the higher level where we have the general in charge and the colonels below them and then majors and captains and all this, but from a squad perspective where you have the lieutenant is in charge of the squad, but the lieutenants they're the youngest officers with the least experience, because they're only just out of officer school. So the real person in charge, in a lot of different ways, is the chief non-commissioned officer, who is the sergeant. And so the sergeant might be much older than the lieutenant, because they can't get any higher than that rank, really, or they don't need to. They prefer just to stay in there. And so they've had a lot of experience. They really know what they're doing, but the lieutenant is technically in command because they're a commissioned officer. So the lieutenant will sort of tell people what to do because they've been relayed orders from their superior. So they'll say, oh yeah, we have to go over there and take that hill or whatever. But the people who the troops are going to follow is the sergeant, because the sergeant knows how to rally the troops and knows how to command people and knows how to get people motivated and to do things. So you've got that kind of dynamic. So the lieutenant is, going, oh yeah, this is the map thing. These are the orders I've got to follow. But he's delegating to the sergeant to really lead, to make people follow and do the work. So yeah, that's a good real world example of, the way things work. And it's like, if you were like in a real world leadership role, not in the military, it's great to have a sergeant character who you can delegate to rally people. Maybe they don't want to be absolutely in charge because they haven't got the time or they haven't got the energy.
That's a great. I would love to see that in more fiction. That dynamic. That's like really interesting. I think I might have seen it a little bit here and there, but yeah, that's really cool.
And yeah, it works to have a good second in command. So normally in we'd always call those lieutenants, even though in a military structure they'd be a sergeant. Defer, with the lieutenant above them. But we always in non-military structure we always say, oh, that's my lieutenant, the second in command. It's just what they tend to be called. No matter if it's a mafia group or like in business or something like that, you have a lieutenant who is you ought
to do a comic story with that dynamic in it somehow. You come up with some kind of story with that. It's really nice nuance.
It is
to military life. Yeah, there's a Pinky TA story maybe or somewhere. You see some military group that.
Well, I don't really depict leadership that well in Pinky TA, but I have it more like, they follow her just because she's in charge, and that's how it works. Okay, so shut up.
You have to use side characters, or maybe it's maybe it's not Pinky TA, it's something else.
Yeah, well, I do have side characters, but they don't tend to lead anything. That's the. It's just the followers. The leadership in my writing is not very nuanced. Well, there's kind of a leadership thing in Bottomless Waitress. Polly is obviously the leadership character there, and that's because she's got more experience. But she's also taller,
and she's, I think, recognized to be the leader, and she's probably the toughest one of the three. So that lines up with what you said. But yeah, I would say that lines up with my other comic in terms of the force of personality and kind of toughness, I guess.
Very much so.
They would all defer. Yeah.
Yeah, she's the oldest, so she's got more experience. And she has more confidence. And she's really tall, and her hair makes her even taller. And it's red, so she stands out. So she's got all these things going for her that can help her in the leader. They don't make her the leader, but they help her be recognized as one and to project her personality, which is interesting. So yeah, being tallest or being, this or that doesn't make you a leader, but it can help, which is something to be aware of.
And projecting, like Tans was talking about earlier, like projecting that certain something, like whether you deserve to be recognized as a leader or not, it can probably help you command that.
Yeah, exactly.
View from people.
Have the biggest hat and the biggest epaulets. Wearing platform shoes.
There you go.
There's also something else that I was thinking, that you might have someone that is a leader in one group and a follower in another. For example, and again I go to that moonlight because I am studying different leaders for various reasons. And because the Greek condition is that everyone wants to lead, and then nobody does. But anyway, you know, like that's the running joke. If you are a Greek, is that put 3 Greeks in a room and you get 4 leaders. So yeah, Fotis in his group of friends, as we start of the story, is the leader of the Leapers. And the reason that he is the leader of the Leapers is that he knows the city really well, like the Athens. He knows the particular neighborhood of Athens where they do the most of their activity. He knows it really well. He knows how to hide, how to get everyone safely from point A to point B, whether it is curfew or not. He has good plans, blah, blah, blah. So, and he also has this congenial personality that we don't see really right now because he is surviving trauma, but originally he did have it. So, but now that he is at the mountains, sorry about that. Now that he is at the mountains with partisans, he is a follower. First of all, because he's very young, and everyone else is an adult. And second of all, because he doesn't know anything. He has to learn pretty much everything about how to act, what to do, where to be, how to be. I mean, it is not a town, and it is not leaping. So he follows.
It's not his expertise in that world. Yeah, there's people who can be leaders in one context and followers in another, and that's common. I mean, there's this idea that, you know, if a character is a leader, they'll always want to be a leader no matter what situation they're in. They're always going to rise, and there's some truth in that, because once a character is used to having followers and being in a leadership position, it can chafe following someone else's orders and someone else's advice. And even if they're not qualified to lead in those situations, they'll still want to do it anyway. They'll still want to go, yeah, but I know what, but I should be in charge. You should be following me. I'll tell you what to do. Even though, they have no idea of what to do in all the different situations. And that happens in reality too, all the time. Like, you'll have an idiot say, well, no, I'm not going to be political. I'm not going to mention any names. No, I will not do it.
You probably have a valid point to make, no matter which name you said.
Yeah. There's really no way to go wrong here. Everyone sucks.
Everyone sucks. Well, let's say just politicians in general will often think that they're qualified to lead no matter what. And generally they're not, because someone in a political position gets there because, I don't know, they were a prominent doctor or a lawyer or something, or a real estate person. And
those are the upstarts. There are a lot that get there because they were in the right family, at least over here. Yeah,
there's in a different country, but say in Australia or America, it's more like you go through the law and you go through doctors and all that kind of stuff. So in Greece, maybe it's a more hereditary kind of thing. You've got the name recognition, you've got the connections, and it can be in that way.
We got nepotism. That's our political system, really.
Yeah. So, but in those things, none of those things give people a qualification to lead, and in all the different things that a politician would need to lead, not just economies, but we have to have leadership over the military. We have to have leadership over foreign affairs. We have to have leadership over, the laws of the land. Like maybe this guy's a great criminal lawyer, but now he's saying stuff about civil law, and that's a totally different thing. There's not that much crossover in expertise in those things, but people think automatically, lawyer, he knows what he's doing, or someone's a professor of economics and now he's guiding the whole economic policy of a country. But being a professor of economics really doesn't automatically qualify you to academia doesn't qualify you to do that in reality.
The problem also is that, okay, assume that you get a professional that is actually good at their job, whoever it is, and they are generally an expert in whatever it is they do. The problem with that is going to be that probably, like, the chances are that they move in certain circles, but in no other circles of society, whatever those circles are. And the problem is that most of these people, if not all, move in like the top tier and like top tiers of society, middle top tiers at best, and they do not really grasp the realities of everyday life in different circumstances than what they are used to. And that is natural if you are not taught how to think with like different variables and stuff, social variables, I mean. So what you get is people making policy that fits their world, not society.
Yeah.
It fits their world, and it makes sense in their world. And then they are surprised when it doesn't work, because it does not really fit reality. And that is the problem with these false leaders, is that they do not grasp whether they have the capacity to know, and they don't really seek to know. They don't seek to learn, and that's the biggest issue. It's like you can get someone that is a rookie or that doesn't know, or what have you. But if they are looking to get the hard facts in order to solve the problem, then you can get somewhere sooner or later in leadership. But when you have this self-absorbed or self-centered person that because they have been successful in their career, and we don't really know where in the ecological systems model they fall to have this success, they feel that, if I was successful with my circumstances, then that means that everyone should be able to be successful with these circumstances, or with whatever it is that they're dealing with.
Yeah.
Then you have issues. You have the pull yourself up by your bootstraps sort of stupid rhetoric.
Yeah.
By people that never had to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. They might think they have done that, but they don't.
Yeah, which is a good reason that plutocrats make terrible leaders.
Yes.
And yeah, well, I was also thinking of the aspect of how I mentioned that they're a leader in one situation, and they think they can be a leader in every situation. But there is a slight truth to that, in that they develop the charismatic way of relating to people and getting people to do things their way and getting people to follow them. And that does translate to different areas, even if they don't know what they're doing. If they're a good enough leader at, being charismatic and getting people to follow them, then they'll do it the right way and they'll defer to people. And okay, so you're the expert at this. you can tell me what to do. You can advise me, and we can
But
do
that
it
is a
your
good
way.
leader, actually.
But that's not
good
only
leader doesn't. Yeah.
not only a good leader, but that's a good leader who can transition, and they can be a leader in different, like situations. So they're like they're a leader
in my
in
opinion,
business, and so
Mhm.
they become a leader of their hobby group, or they become the foreman of a jury, and they just naturally fall into that leadership position in whatever
Okay.
area
So
they
yeah,
go
what
to.
you're talking about, and that's in my book. That is just a good leader. Period. Like a good leader doesn't need to have the knowledge that I mentioned, but what they do need to have is first the method of of going at the problem. Like how do you approach a problem? You need to have some kind of method. Charisma aside, okay, and that means that when you know that you don't know, you find people that do, and you surround yourself with people that do. They give you the hard facts, and then you can make the informed decisions based on your method that you have by experience developed and know that is successful. That is a good leader,
Yeah.
because no person knows everything.
Oh,
So.
definitely. And
Mhm.
and the opposite of that is the person who wants to lead in all those situations the same as the other one, and they know how to get people to follow them, or they know how to make it seem as if they're in a leadership position, but they're crap at it. They lead people off a cliff, basically.
And like, when do you get like one of the biggest red flags in fiction and in real life? Of, okay, you have been had, and it is a bad leader, is that they will spin any mistake from the smallest to the biggest as a success. And if they are even worse, they will also do censorship. So that's a bad leader. And my condolences.
That's quite common.
It is, because we have bad leaders in general.
Yeah, I know that when in my leadership role of Drunkduck, when anything bad happens to the site, I always say, "Yep, that's a feature. That's not a bug. That was intention. That downtime, I did that because the servers needed a break to cool down." And
Exactly.
Yep.
We know you're a crap leader, also.
Exactly. These spammers, they're not really spammers invading the site. These they're giving life and energy, and
they are getting
that's more attention on the site. It's good. It's a win.
Yeah,
Exactly.
they are getting backlinks to the site. We get so much SEO.
Precisely. See, it's all part of the it's a meta plan. You just don't know. That's it.
Yeah,
the
you
secret
know nothing.
plans.
You know nothing, boy. That's and yeah, and unfortunately, you have all these leadership courses and stuff, and they focus mostly on the charisma and how to get people to shut up and follow you. And that does not make a good leader. That just makes someone that can skate through leadership, but they will lead their team to disaster. It's a mathematical certainty that they will.
Every time, if you're not willing to listen or to get source expertise cleverly, you don't just... Because you can also get in the trap of, say, oh, you're a leader and you're sourcing expert. That's good, but you're not smart enough to realize that that kind of leadership structure, that hierarchy, also happens below you. So maybe you're going to defer to the next most charismatic person, and you think that they know what they're doing in the situation, but they don't. They're just exactly the same as, a bad leader, but they're a bad lieutenant.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, that makes for a bad leader, because a leader is not supposed to only be able to rally. That's a figurehead. That's a completely different thing. And you could have a figurehead that does all the charisma and the rallying and the stuff. And the real leader is standing behind and is actually doing the leading. Like Simba and Nala.
Oh,
But
I
anyway.
know. No, what I meant was like you've got your leader and they're deferring,
Yeah,
but they're deferring to
yeah.
someone who's saying, "Yeah, I know what to do.
Yeah,
I know."
and again, you have to let the reality be your compass in a sense. Like, okay, mistakes happen with everyone, but if you regularly make mistakes and do not get better and make the same, basically, if you make the same mistakes, if you make different mistakes, that's okay. But if you make the same mistake more than twice, you should be booted from the position. It's as simple as that. And it's like, sorry, thank you for playing, but we're not playing.
Boom, boom. Well, yeah, like you're saying, there are a lot of these leadership courses, and they follow charisma, and there are different leadership like styles in different areas. So, like we talked about the military, where they have a hierarchical system based on, I don't know, experience and competence and things like this. In business, it tends to be like just luck or a kind of false meritocracy often a plutocracy. Whoever's the wealthiest and gets into the position of power and can pay people to be under them, it can just become the leader by default. It's interesting. So it used to be in business that was a more military structure, based on experience and length of time in a position and all that. But now it tends to be like the fake meritocracy or connections, or say if you've got business degrees and all that kind of stuff, you can walk into leadership roles. And a business degree is just, I'm afraid I don't have much respect for that idea. That's ridiculous. Like the old pirates would have the leadership based on a democracy. So they would have to be voted in to be the leader, and if they performed badly, they could be deposed and someone else could take over. So that was in direct opposition to the naval role, who, they were like trying to be a better version of. So, yeah, there's so many different things.
That reminds me, like, from reality, from history, when the War of Independence in Greece broke out successfully, because people had been trying to revolt for like centuries, and we had like 7 or 10 failed attempts, something like that. But the successful one was successful because you didn't have a regular army, obviously, but you had these captains that were captains purely on merit. They had the capacity to lead and win battles. And when that started to be counterbalanced with the regular army, especially when the great forces came in trying to shape the army into something modern, blah blah blah. I'm trying to use a neutral language here. The thing was that what they did was they tried to put leaders that hadn't earned the respect of the soldiers, of people that used to be partisans, basically. And that really backfired and nearly cost us the revolution. So, and there was this one anecdote that has been confirmed, that one of the super respected captains, his name was Karaiskakis, he had a potty mouth, he was terrible. And that, like, he used the equivalent of the F word every third or something like that. And he, yeah, and he said he was being challenged for his position by this other guy that was a plant from, foreigners and stuff. And he said that we don't need to fight over this. We have a battle tomorrow coming up, and that's going to determine who is and who is not the captain of this group. And he won the battle, but he was shot in the back and died.
Oh.
Yay!
Well, then that did
Yay!
determine who's the leader.
Meritocracy. But yeah, so leaders.
Yeah, it's a complicated subject, isn't it? The reality, and of course, fiction is in fiction, it's sometimes realistic, and of course, it has to be informed by real life, but it's often a caricature or a simplification, because that's what you have to do in fiction. You can't have all the aspects. Yeah, shorthands, quite simplified. That's why I was talking in the beginning of the biggest, strongest, because that's as Bain said, that's not always the way leaders are portrayed, but it's a very easy way of making people recognize it, because that's the leadership a lot of people have experienced as children, usually with bullies and stuff like that. A bully who is a bigger and stronger person will often, or at least they seem that way to a little kid, will gather a group of friends around them. And people, for some reason, people have this stupid idea that all life is based on the structures and the systems they encountered as children. And they'll always think that, it's always bullies. And, yeah, the bigger, strongest. So that's the reason why it's often portrayed that way in fiction. But yeah, the reality is that often, it's all different kinds of people who are leaders.
True. I mean, in elementary school, the biggest bully was a short, reedy little thing that had no business being the bully, but he was. So until I beat him down a little bit.
You hammered that nail down to the ground.
Yeah, and he didn't expect it, because I was literally the shortest, and I remained throughout my life the shortest kid in the class, and a girl. And then, to add insult to injury, I played innocent when he complained to the teacher, and he didn't believe him that I could have beaten him. So yeah, that
and
was
Tance
fun.
became the new bully.
Yeah, I could have, if I wanted, honestly. But yeah, no, I didn't become that.
The gang leader. You were what's his name?
The leader of the pack.
The leader of the pack. Oh, I love that song. Or Tony Soprano, or no, who am I thinking of? Scarface guy. Tony Montana.
No, I just wanted him to leave me alone, and he wasn't buzzing off, so I beat him off.
All the kids followed you.
No. I wasn't a popular kid in school.
Well,
but they stopped bothering me, which was fine.
Well, speaking about leadership, let's say the anecdote of how I got in charge of Drunkduck was not because I took it by force or I wanted it. It was more like I killed the previous guy. No, it was because
you are a usurper.
Exactly. It was because that I became an admin when there are a lot of admins on the site, when there was the big group of them. But it wasn't because I wanted a leadership position. It was because I really loved the site and wanted it to keep on going. I wanted it to function. I wanted to be part of the core of making it work. And I wanted that so much. And, I was part of that group. And, I just got made an admin because of that. And the others sort of, as life went on, they sort of left the site or, had different priorities. And I stuck with it because I still wanted the site to work. And I felt this, I felt like an obligation to all the people who were on the site, and they had comics, because I kept thinking, I've got my comic here. And I'd hate it if the site, disappeared or wasn't working for my comic. So those people must be feeling the same way. So that's what I was always thinking. I always wanted to retain retain the people, retain the history of the site, but also like keep it going for the people who expected to have their comics hosted and the people who expected to read the comics. So that was always my feeling about that. So that was why I stuck with it. And then when I became the last kind of admin, the last Jedi of the whole system, then I was forced to have this kind of responsibilities onto me. So leadership wasn't a thing that I wanted in that, like leading of people or being in charge or being prominent. It was more about just wanting things to go and wanting to maintain the system. And that was the only way to do it, was to take that role. And then I had to learn how to do all the other things on the as I was going, you know. But I never wanted to be like the guy in charge or the one person, or you know, like the general, the captain kind of thing, and have people like going, oh, leader, you know, that kind of stuff. So that's my story of leadership of the site anyway. So yeah. I don't know if you guys have got similar stories.
Well, thankfully.
Sorry, Baines?
I said, thankfully, you did take that on.
Thank you.
That's why we exist. We continue to exist.
But so have you guys got similar roles where you've like fallen into leadership?
Yeah, I do have one, which is a little bit sad, I guess. So when I was an undergraduate, we had this very, very sad psychology club, a psychology society basically, which was supposed to support psychology students throughout their academic life. And it was basically dead in the water. There was nothing that was being done, because what you had was people that, I don't know, didn't know how to do that. I have no idea why it was so pathetically non-active. And they were baffled why psychology students wouldn't sign up. I remember when I went to sign up to get the support, and we were like, the new sign-ups were something like 3 people, 4 people. When my cohort was 200 new students.
Wow.
And so I was sort of getting to know them, and they weren't bad. They were not like nefariously sabotaging the society or whatever like that. But they just didn't have any kind of experience on how to first to be supportive. And when I went into learning psychology, I was already a teacher I had been a teacher for at least 5 years already. So that gives you a lot of experience on how to be the support of an entire class. And I used that by, giving them suggestions on like, okay, we could do this. We could put out like to give flyers that give these pointers. We could do, a variety of things. And they were like, okay, like that sort of thing. And in the end, like after a year or so, and because I was in a hurry, I was taking courses, really a lot of courses per semester. So I was towards junior level, let's say, like towards my 3rd year out of the 4, after a year and a half or so. So they basically said, you know what, we need you to run for the governance, governing little thing. Let's say like the party. I don't know. It sounds sinister, but anyway. And I said, I'm not interested, guys, to run into any election or anything like that. And they said, don't do anything. Like, just can we enter your name in the ballot, please? Because we need you to do this, and that, and this will give you the capacity to do it, and talk with the administration. And I said, okay, do it. And then I was elected. And I found myself being the vice president of the Psychology Society. And the president was a guy that just wanted it on his CV.
Oh,
And
Jesus.
wasn't very interested. He wanted just to be able to say, as his, side shows, that this was something that he did. So I found myself basically being the president and the vice president as well, until I graduated. And we did some good work, not as much as I would have liked, but we did what we could, considering the administration wasn't very eager to fund us on anything. So we did everything by student funding.
Okay.
So yeah.
So
Yeah,
it
that.
was- the initial impetus was just knowing what, having care about the whole situation and wanting to make things better.
Yeah, I couldn't stand seeing it so defunct, honestly. That was the only reason. Like, it really it got under my skin. It's like when you walk into a room and it's a mess and you need to clean it up. That was it, honestly. That was the only reason that I got into it in the first place.
So what about you, Bones?
Nothing on that level, on either of those levels. Neither of you guys, those are great. I guess the closest thing, I've often avoided that kind of thing, instinctively or on purpose, one or the other. I would often have friends through my whole life. I would end up with a close friend who was very much the stronger personality and the take charge type. So the only time it really happened that is coming to mind is just in my band. And I'd been in other bands, but finally putting together my own thing, and it was with someone else who was essential. And we made a lot of decisions by talking about it and stuff like that. But I played piano and sang, he played guitar and sang, so we put it together. And just because of personality, I guess, it was on me to sort of push things forward and decide on material and get us jobs and
Wow.
get rehearsals off the ground and kind of just be in charge in most ways, with the other guys being essential also. But it all ended up directed by me, and it was a thrill.
That's awesome.
While it lasted, it was a lot of fun.
Wow, well that's a
And then they all died.
Then they all died.
No, they're all fine. They're all alive.
Well, that's amazing. That's how Bon Jovi got so big.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a rush, and it's also you guys would know better than I, but it's sort of there's a burden to it, even on that tiny small level. The burden was small, but there still is a kind of like personality conflicts or problems. It's like, oh, it's kind of my responsibility, even if it's not me who's having the issue. It's like, oh, it's kind of goes to me to deal with.
I think it's always the same, no matter the scale. It's always the same. So it's not small.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah,
I would say the same.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Wow, I really respect that. A band leader. Jeez.
Fun time.
Yeah.
Then I moved away. Be alone.
I said I would love to hear you, to listen to you.
Yeah.
I do have a CD around somewhere that turned up. It's years ago, and when I listened back, there were little good bits, but I would have to edit out tiny little seconds that were good. A lot of it is not that great. But I'll send you some if I can find this. If I can find it again, I'll send you some.
You gotta upload it to YouTube, man, in its entirety.
Maybe.
That's what the old bands do, and they get new followings. So someone will remember you. You'll get a following. All right. Well, this has been Quackcast number 596. Jesus. So thank you very much for listening to our thing about leadership. Our
Thank you.
rambling diatribes. All right. Bye-bye, people. Bye-bye.
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 Bye bye.